Beneath the cold weight of her chains, she had long believed she was nothing, just a prisoner, a tool, a shadow of her own life. Yet when a human stepped forward, not with steel or threat, but with steady hands and unwavering eyes, something impossible happened. In that quiet, fleeting moment, she felt seen, not as a captive, but as a being capable of hope, of choice, of freedom. And for the first time, she wondered if her life could mean more than survival. Ash swirled in the dim glow of the ruined citadel, carried on a bitter wind that smelled of burnt metal and scorched stone. She knelt among the broken remains of the observation deck, her blue skin faintly luminescent under the flickering emergency lights, the subtle sheen of sweat mixing with grime and streaks of ash. Her long black hair clung to her face, tangled and windblown, partially covering the anguish in her wide, silver-tinged eyes. Elegant white horns arched gracefully from her head, catching the broken light like carved marble, a crown of resilience and sorrow. Her torn combat gear clung modestly to her strong, curvaceous form, revealing the athletic power that had been forged for war, but now barely able to support the weight of exhaustion. She hugged her knees to her chest, trembling as her fingers traced the cold metal of the shock collar that still hummed faintly against her neck, a mechanical reminder of the chains that had defined her life. I stepped closer through the debris, careful with each step as the floor groaned beneath the weight of collapse and ruin, my heart hammering not with fear, but with the desperate need to reach her. She flinched as my shadow fell over her, instinctive terror rippling through her body, yet she did not flee. Her trust had been broken too many times to allow it, but still she stayed, as if some unspoken thread connected us across the vast chasm of war and loss. I lowered myself to her level, keeping my hands visible, empty, a gesture that I hoped would speak louder than any words. Her eyes, luminous and wide, darted between my face and my hands, searching for betrayal, for threat, but finding none. "You're not here to hurt me," I whispered softly, my voice steady despite the chaos around us. The wind carried the distant echoes of collapsing structures, the faint roar of fire across the citadel, and still, she studied me, the faintest quiver of her lips betraying both fear and a longing for connection she did not dare to trust. Slowly, hesitantly, she extended her trembling hand toward mine, her fingertips brushing against the warmth of my palm in a fleeting touch that sent a spark through the cold night air. I could feel the pulse of her life beneath her skin, fragile yet defiant, and in that moment, all the blood and ash and ruin fell away. There was only this fragile bridge between us. Her lips parted, a whisper breaking the silence, telling me she had long believed herself defined by chains, by captivity, by the expectations of those who bred her for war. She had been told she was expendable, that her life had no value outside the service she was forced to perform, that her worth was nothing without obedience. And yet here I was, kneeling before her, seeing her not as a weapon, not as a possession, but as a being who deserved more than mere survival. The shift in her expression was subtle at first, a tremor of disbelief passing over her features, but then blossoming into something more. Hope, delicate and fragile, yet luminous like the glow of distant stars through a smoke-filled sky. I offered her my hand again, this time gently pressing my palm against hers, letting her feel that she was not alone, that even in this ruined world, she had someone who would fight to keep her alive, who would see the soul beneath the metal and the scars. Around us, shadows moved as the last of the enemy patrols scoured the area, unaware that a bond far stronger than chains had already been forged in the quiet defiance of two lives clinging to each other. She rose slowly, every movement deliberate and wary, yet her shoulders straightened, her spine finding the strength that had been buried beneath years of fear and oppression. Her horns caught the fractured light as she looked at me, and in her eyes, I saw the first flicker of something dangerous yet beautiful, trust. Not blind trust, but a decision to risk believing in someone other than herself. I guided her toward the broken walkway that led to the remains of the transport hangar, each step a cautious negotiation between hope and fear. Her torn gear snagged on jagged metal, but she brushed it aside, her lithe form moving with a grace honed by years of combat, and yet softened now by the vulnerability she no longer hid. When we reached the hangar, the ground trembled under distant explosions, sending clouds of ash swirling around us. She flinched instinctively, but I held her close, our hands entwined, letting her feel the solidity of human warmth against the cold, indifferent chaos of the universe. In the moment before we moved, she paused, turning her gaze toward the horizon where smoke and fire painted the sky in cruel shades of orange and violet. She whispered that she had believed freedom was impossible, that chains had defined her identity for as long as she could remember. I looked at her then, really looked, tracing the curve of her horns, the cascade of black hair over her shoulders, the powerful yet vulnerable lines of her body, and told her simply that freedom had always existed. Not outside, not in empty air or distant worlds, but in the choice to live, to trust, to reach out for someone who sees you. Her chest rose with a shuddering breath as tears streaked her cheeks, glinting faintly in the light like molten silver. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to step forward without fear, her hand clinging to mine, not as a prisoner to a captor, but as a warrior deciding to stand with someone who would never let her fall. Around us, the ruins whispered of death and betrayal, yet in that quiet moment, a new story began. One not of chains, but of hope. We moved together through the hangar, dodging the last patrols, her body pressed close to mine in a protective embrace, her horns grazing against my shoulder, reminding me of the elegance and resilience of the life I had sworn to protect. The ash settled, the wind softened, and though the citadel lay in ruins behind us, she walked taller than ever before, choosing for the first time not to be defined by captivity, but by the courage to exist freely, seen, and cherished. And as dawn's light finally broke over the horizon, glinting across her luminous blue skin and casting soft highlights across the curve of her horns and the strands of her long black hair, she turned to me and smiled. Tentative, fragile, yet undeniably real. And in that single expression, I understood that the chains that had bound her for so long were broken, not by force, but by the unwavering presence of someone who believed in her worth, someone who had chosen her life over the darkness of the universe, and someone who would never let her be alone again.